kind of an annual EAS meeting that the Broadcast Warning Working Group is trying to put together for attendees and others who are interested in EAS, the EAS stakeholder community. And let's see, we have actually a fairly good number of people in the room. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. We've got about 25 people in the room. And who do we have on the phone? I know we have Larry Eslak, we have Clay Frywald, and Al Kenyon. Anybody else? I thought I heard a couple of chirps in there, but if anybody is listening and working, that's fine. We welcome you. We came up with a brief agenda for this meeting, but I wanted to say something before we get into the agenda items. A month ago, I attended, somebody just joined us on the phone?
Richard, is Larry, I switched phones.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, thanks, Larry. Anyway, what I was going to say is NASBA and NAB hosted a meeting in Washington with federal partners a month ago, and Gary Tim was there, I was there, and I was very much impressed with what appears to be a growing amount of cooperation with the federal partners, FEMA, FCC, Weather Service, and also the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They're kind of like the four legs of the whole EAS effort, and it was very nice to see them on a panel, all working well together on a panel, and all pushing in the same direction. And I made a comment to some people since then that for upcoming legislation, I think it would be wonderful if all the federal partners could actually be at a hearing table for this legislation all together to show that this is more than just FEMA, more than just FCC, more than just the Weather Service, that it's, and it's more than AMRA. So it's really a joint effort of all the federal partners to help. And so I think something good can come out of that. But legislation notwithstanding, it was just good to see all the federal partners working together. Today we're faced with a different issue where the federal partners can't be with us because of the sequester. And we only have one federal partner on the line, Al Kenyon. Welcome to the meeting, Al.
Thank you, Richard. I think it's a unique experience to attend a NAB meeting when I've just come in from walking the dog.
Okay, I hope the dog appreciates that too. Okay. Anyway, we're going to try to stick to the agenda as closely as possible, and I wanted to mention that NAB has given me the opportunity to deliver a paper on Wednesday on the 2 Steps Forward initiative. And for broadcasters, it's something that a lot of local committees and state committees are already doing. They're trying to refine the list of codes that are on plans and go back to the broadcast community in their areas and just do something simple. Say, this is a very, very short list of codes based on hazard assessment for our area. And we'd like you to promise to run these codes. And because this is all voluntary, because there's no more government mandatory, we think that trying to get that kind of a promise might possibly be a breakthrough. The bigger issue, as we all know, is trying to get this before the local emergency management community and trying to get into their hearts and minds. And I'd like to someday do another version of this paper or make speakers available to be able to do that to the emergency management community at the local level. And so if any of you have any ideas or thoughts or have people that you are very close to in the EM community, it would be a good thing to think about. And that's really all I wanted to say about my paper, because if I tell you everything in the paper, you don't have to go there. Anyway.
And your paper will be presented when?
All that, yeah. Wednesday at the regulatory session between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, and the draw will probably be outgoing FCC Chairman Janikowski in his session that appears at the same time. So we'll see if anybody shows up. Anyway, I will. Okay, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about state and local plans, and rather than us talking about this a lot, I thought I'd let Gary say a couple of words, and then basically we want to hear from people who are in the audience about this, and people like Clay and other people that have gone a long way right now to do this. But Gary, why don't you just make some opening remarks and kind of kick it off in that direction, please?
Yeah, this was again from the EAS forum in Washington, D.C. that NASPA and NAB put on. That was on March 4th, about a month ago. It was really the first time I've heard the commission actually say what they want to see in state plans. Gray Cook said he does have a pile of state plans on his desk, and in a lot of those, they're not seeing what they want to see. The two things that they highlighted is that they want to be able to trace the source of the EAN for every station in your state. And that's that concept they call the map book. So they basically want to be able to look at WXYZ, who are they monitoring, and where's the EAN coming from. They want to be able to see how the EAN is propagating through your state. So along with that, they want to see very concrete monitoring assignments. They noted in the state plans that have already been submitted, some of them have a whole list of options for monitoring assignments. They alluded that's not what they want to see. They want to see specific monitoring assignments so they know exactly what monitoring assignments each station is supposed to be monitoring. They went as far as talking about they're even thinking of adding fields to the online license to fill in these monitoring assignments, which may be a little overboard, but for those that are rewriting EAS plans, be aware that FCC is still fixated on this EAN and being able to figure out how it propagates through the whole state. That's a big deal to them. The other thing that they mentioned, and of course the obvious, how will CAP be distributed to all EAS participants in the state? So they want to see some kind of a description on how that gets propagated through the state. And again, that's another map book kind of thing. The other miscellaneous items that they added, some things kind of new to me. They wanted 24/7 contacts for the members of the SECC. So they could get a hold of SECC members at any time during the day. Why they would want to do that, I'm not quite sure at 3 in the morning, but who is your PEP station? And
excuse me, Gary?
Yes.
Could you repeat that again? They want 24/7 numbers for all SECC members?
Well, the SECC, however you want to define it, with the understanding the SECC isn't even described in the FCC rules. So where do you take that? You know, they want contacts for the organization that isn't even defined in their own rules. So, but they just want a way to, if there's monitoring problems or whatever, apparently they just want a way to get a hold of the SECC members. There were other things. I sent out an email on Friday on the EAS remailer. So if anybody didn't see that, it went out on the SECC list. So if you're not on that list, you may not have seen it. So if you want a copy of that, let me know. But I have more in my summary of what the FCC talked about, but we're trying to keep things short today. So.
Just looking out in the audience in the room, we have a pretty good cross-section of chairs and vendors and others, all stakeholders here. I wonder if we don't have that many people in the room. Why doesn't everybody stand up and introduce yourself and where you're from? Good loud voice, because we don't have the wireless today.
John Root, Mineral Electronics, EAS Product Manager.
Robertson, Digital Alert Systems.
Monroe again?
Yep. Jim Hemingway, Monroe Electronics. Digital Alert Systems.
Trifecta.
There you go.
I'm not with Monroe, I just I'm Larry Wilkins, I'm the Alabama State Chair.
Thank you, Larry.
Larry Wilkins, Alabama.
Robert Raymond, Arizona,
Raymond,
SECC Chair.
Arizona.
Adrian Abbott, Nevada Chair.
Adrian Abbott from Nevada.
One of those EM type people, George Molnar, former broadcaster now, statewide interoperability coordinator with the Division of Emergency Management in Nevada.
Nevada Emergency Management, all right.
Bill Krogan, co-chair of Southern Nevada EAS Operational Area.
Darrell Parker, TFT.
Darrell Parker, TFT, we know that line.
It's like a fancy party where you get announced. Harold Price, Sage Alerting
Harold
Systems.
Price from Sage Alerting.
Bob Lawyer, KTVX TV, Salt Lake.
Right, Salt Lake City.
Scott Mason, Los Angeles, co-chair with Richard in the LA area, and also SBE EAS and with PPAC too.
Scott Mason, and he's from PPAC and EAS Education.
Yes.
Jim Dahlke, I'm with the Washington SECC. I work with Clay.
Jim Dahlke from Washington State.
Leonard Charles from the Wisconsin Committee, work with Gary.
Leonard Charles from Wisconsin SECC.
Roger Herring, SECC for Oklahoma.
Roger Herring, Oklahoma SECC.
Wayne Hart, currently consulting with No Weather Radio with the Weather Service.
Wayne Hart with NWS.
Donald Walker with Gorman Redwood.
Gorman Redwood.
Jim Golan from Golan Redwood.
Jim from Gorman Redwood.
John Collinson, Ventana Television.
Mike McCarthy, Newsweb Radio, Chicago.
Paul Jewishak, KFQD Radio, Anchorage, Alaska, and PPAC.
Larry Foss, KKHJ, Pongo Pongo, American Samoa, and PPAC.
Oh, American Samoa and PPAC, all right. And Alaska from PPAC.
Martin Stabbard, KKOH Reno, Pep Station, and also PPAC board member.
Okay, and do we have anybody else join us on the phone?
Chris Murray from Oregon.
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Okay, everybody's waving. Actually, nobody's waving. Okay, one person. Okay, all right. Marcus, okay.
Hi, Richard. This is Wayne. I also joined a little bit late.
Okay, Wayne, we're with FEMA. You didn't have a chance to hear me compliment the excellent showing of the federal partners last month at the NASBA NAB event. But for your benefit, I will repeat that. It was really good and heartening to see that. Gary, Tim, and I and others in the room commented on it afterwards. It was really good.
Hey, Richard, this is Andy. One down. I joined a little bit late as well. I'm just very concerned to be there. I just wanted to join the call and see if I could learn a little something from the national broadcasters that we work with on a daily basis. I just want to see if I can learn anything on Sunday.
Well, we all learn from each other. Okay, as far as the state plan issue is concerned, now that we've heard from a good number of representatives of states, Clay, do you have any very brief comments about where you see this going from your perspective? Because you got a head start on most of us.
Okay, well, hello to everyone in the room down there in Las Vegas, or I couldn't think of saying. As far as Washington State is concerned and the state plan, we are just about done the complete rewriting of our state plan. We wrote our first one back in 1997 and revised it in 2004, and this revision will be more extensive. A couple of the goals of the state plan, if you're in the process of writing yours and you're looking for an idea, is to have a document that you can put in somebody's lap and say, here, read this, and with the understanding that they should be able to do it within a reasonable short period of time. They don't have to say, well, let me take this home and study it and I'll get back to you. This should be a pretty quick read, and when you get through reading it, they should have a good understanding of how EAS works in your state. And it should cover the important facets of EAS, and the regulatory aspects of it, and certainly including some of the new things that have come along, common learning protocol, CAD servers, and of course, the all-important thing is how does EAS work, and it should include the diagrams and schematics, flow charts, so that anybody can look at that and decide how they would like to do it. Here in Washington, our state plan, again, was developed by a consortium of people, which is the majority of which still are on our FCCC. Back in '97, we decided to make part of the plan that we call the boilerplate to be the part that is not changed very often. And that's the part that we are changing and rewriting. The rest of it, we have what we call tabs. And I went to a local office supply store, like a Staples or something like that, and found an Avery product that had 32 tabs that you stick in a 3-ring binder. And we adopted that as a means of collating those items in our state plan that are frequent change items. In other words, the contact information for SECC and LECC chairs, maps and instructions for cable, National Weather Service, etc. We don't have all 32 filled, but we probably have about, I'm going to say probably 25 of them. If anyone would like to learn more about how the Washington State Plan is constructed, how we do it, and why we do it the way we do, you're certainly welcome to contact me. You can contact me on the EAS forum, and I will send you offline all kinds of information that will tell you essentially how we did it here and why it seems to work well for us. Does that answer your question, Richard?
Sure does. Thank you, Clay. Okay, Larry Eslag, do you have any comments you'd like to make about that? About state plans, local plans?
Richard, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, great. I think our plan is similar to what's happened in Washington. However, we have some additional work to do because we're going to be doing a state aggregator, which opens up the door to, I guess, more work for us initially, but I think it will make everybody play together better. And the big thing I think that we were able to accomplish, which now is in place, is that we were able to tie all of our television stations in essentially with we're using the road data decks with internet inside. So each one of those television stations will act as the same level of connectivity as if they were LP1 or 2s. So we can distribute information to those stations with audio as easily as we can do with the radio. Basically take a step up of the chain and make those guys play as complete participants. Having started using it again, because we did off the biggest challenge, and that is Amber. And Amber words are essentially one of the more difficult things to compose because they're virtually completely, unscripted as far as what information you can have at the time the Amber is issued. So that's where we're about, I would say, 75 to 80% ready to do this. We're working now on the output phase, which the input phase is done. That's the section of the software in which the law enforcement persons enter their information. They can take pictures, crop them, attach them to the document, then it proceeds to the state police for approval. It is the output quality that we're concerned about now. In other words, that the message that is displayed on those television stations will be provided with audio, and we want to make sure that we track the message cleanly through the whole system. And we also have, at the same time, we'll be entering that information to a Facebook page and also to Twitter. So we're pretty excited about all this, and if it can be done with Amber, I believe we can do any other messaging as successfully. So that's what's on store in Michigan this year.
Thank you, Larry. I will expand a little bit. This is Richard again talking on what Gary was saying about what happened last month at the meeting in Washington. Whoops, hello. Somebody join us? Guess not. Okay. Anyway, the FCC was talking about wanting to accept this in machine-readable form. And that was mentioned in the original notice of proposed rulemaking, and it was brought up again at this meeting a month ago. We've looked at this a little bit in Los Angeles, and basically, the best idea we've come up with for the Los Angeles committee, I'm not actually on the committee, I'm an advisor for the LA committee and vice chair for the state, but was to basically try to reduce the monitoring assignments to an Excel spreadsheet matrix. And to me, that's machine readable. You know, you can send a file, and you could basically then take those and combine those in an Excel workbook, and basically then have a master sheet that would all the pages for the individual monitoring assignments would tumble to. So that's one way to do it. And I don't know, I haven't heard any other ideas on this, but I'd like to put that out to the group. Is what would your reaction be to machine readable, or should we go back to the commission and say that we think this is unreasonable? So that's something to keep in mind here. Adrian, what's happening with you here in Las Vegas?
It's been really exciting because Nevada is going with a CAP software program that will be distributed or authorized for local agencies as well as the state. Now, Nevada is what they call a home rule state, which means that our individual counties, agencies within those counties, sheriff's department, police department, health department, fire, all have the ability to declare a disaster without going through the state. That translates to EAS in that it means a local police department or sheriff's department can authorize an activation for an Amber Alert or a fire evacuation order or a flood evacuation without having to go up through the State Emergency Management Division. So it's important that each county here have the ability to launch an activation of EAS through the CAP software program. Other things that are in play here are the fact that we have 3 different EAS regions within this state. We also have now, thank goodness, 2 PEP stations at either end of the state. There is no one broadcast signal that covers the entire state, and that's pretty much generic to the west. It's just the nature of the size of the beast. So we are looking at rewriting our state plans now that we have the ability to initiate state and regional EAS activations through the CAP software. We're in the process of rewriting our plan, and in 1997 we had plans for each of our 3 regions. We also had plans that were individualized for the weather service, for local emergency managers, if you were a participating station, or if you were a local primary station. So that was different versions of each plan customized for the broadcaster role. I expect it will be reasonably easy once we get into how things are going to work with CAP to do the same kind of customization with our new EAS plans. But yes, it's a lot of work. We do not make these available electronically simply because with our local primary stations in the legacy system, the activation process is through a secure phone line. We don't want those phone numbers to be out floating around on the internet somewhere. We do have a map book. We finished that about 1.5 years ago. That is available on the Nevada Broadcasters Association website. It lists every station that is in the Nevada operational area, and that includes a chunk of Eastern California, Richard's territory. I have his back door, basically. We also have...
Well, we're happy that happens.
We also have portions of northern Arizona, and I have a station licensed to Idaho and a station licensed to Utah. So we kind of bring a lot of western states into play. It's a big job, and somebody's got to do it. So if anybody has any questions, I'm always available to answer questions.
Which software are you using?
We are going with the My State USA product, which is also used in Washington State and Idaho. So hopefully we're building some kind of a state regional capability here to make it easier. Our disasters don't happen and involve the whole state. Our disasters involve portions of Nevada and portions of California, or portions of Nevada and portions of Utah. It's emergency managers have the ability of working amongst each other across state lines through MOUs in the EMAC process. For broadcasters, we're used to it. It's just going to be making sure that our plan takes all the political entities into consideration.
There's somebody on the phone that's speaking to us. Is there something anybody needs to say on the phone?
Richard, I believe you're getting new people dialing in. It's just come through on the listserv. They hasn't gone through on the listserv yet.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Al. I want to get back.
Al, Richard, this is Manny. They just joined in.
Okay. Manny Centano, also with FEMA, is with us, along with Wade Whitmer and Al Kenyon. Thank you, Manny, for joining us. We just briefly say that the effort that FEMA's put into everything has been fantastic, and that we appreciate the fact that the federal partners are working better together now. Anyway, as far as state plan issues, local plan issues, does anybody have any thoughts about the way they're doing it, or questions about what you've heard so far today that you'd like to maybe come up to a microphone and talk about for a minute? So everybody's, how many people have actually started showing hands? We can't see the hands on the telephone. How many people in the room have actually started to do revisions on their state plans? How many people? Okay, all right, thank you, Chris. Now, how many people have sent their plans to the FCC?
I have Oregon.
Okay, yeah, I know you did.
Only one hand went up here.
One hand. Okay, Mike McCarthy's hand went up. So was that a hand, or do you have to go back?
I'm 99% certain Illinois sent in their most recent plan.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I must say one of the things I'm waiting for in Wisconsin is that as part of the fifth report and order back in January of 2012, the commission deferred on 7 items which they are not making a decision on until they release their report on the nationwide EAS test. So there's things hanging there, specifically if there's going to be revisions to the FCC map book, there may be new rules on the state EAS plans and the SECC authority and responsibilities, whether there's going to be a national EAS code, the 000 has been suggested. If manual operation will be allowed for processing the EAN, the EAS operating handbook, whether that's maybe going to be revised or eliminated, and the same with the FCC map book, which it sounds like they're kind of fixated on, so that's probably not going away, but there could be revisions. And possible changes to the RWT and RMT. So, you know, you got to figure out how, at what point do you submit your plan and then a week later they change all this stuff, which is going to obviously have to get reflected in the state plans.
Well, what Gary is saying is exactly what I've been telling my cohorts of the California Committee and other people that have asked me is, why should we go to the work of writing a plan and submitting it when the FCC has told us that they haven't finished the rules yet? Because we don't, you know, there's no official mention of state committees or local committees in the rules yet they're asking now for our phone numbers. And you know, there's nobody on the call from the FCC to defend themselves on this, nor if there were anybody on the call, they probably wouldn't want to say anything right now. But anyway, it's kind of an interesting situation, let's just put it that way.
Well, one of the other things they did mention at the forum in March is that the commission is considering putting together a state plan template containing all the information that they want to see in a state plan. But again, they're not going to release that until they release the report on the nationwide EAS test. So they were kind of alluding that that's going to be coming soon, that report, which then will release these, you know, them to look at these extra rules and possibly do a template. They did seem to want to have a dialogue about what should be in the state plan.
That was
so
mentioned.
Tom did welcome comments.
They haven't come back to any of us to ask us to dialogue with them on it. Okay, we're going to move on to the next agenda topic, which is iPause Open, cap and internet issues. Manny, since you're on the call, would you like to say a few words to us about iPause Open?
Sure, I'd like to. I believe Wade and Antoine are on the call as well. I don't know if they want to say a few words. I'll go ahead and.
Okay, well, I didn't know who was left, but anyway, if you can decide who's going to talk about it, we'd just like to have you say something.
Okay, now I'll go back. I don't think they're on the line. I came in a little late, Ricky, so I'm not sure exactly what happened before.
Okay, Wade was on for a while. Yeah.
Hello?
I said Wade was on for a while, but please go ahead, man.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Richard, and good afternoon, everyone there and on the phone. You know, we of course continue to work with iPause Open to make it available to state and local authorities for learning, and of course on the interface of it as well, so that disseminators such as broadcasters, the EAS participants can start receiving alerts. There have been some connectivity issues here and there that everyone is aware of, and we're working very hard to get those solved. This, of course, has been a massive effort to get CAP deployed throughout the country, and so there will be further developments. There is further work going on, and one of the things that we're doing, Richard, is working with the state and local governments to help them develop their public warning policies and sign up for iPause so that there can be rated A's on that side. And so we're developing a number of best practices that we've already publicized and had webinars and meetings on, and we're working with a couple of states, several other states, to help them create that process and create requirements for public warning in their area. So, you know, it's not just the technical side of the dissemination of the messages, but it's also making sure that the folks that are creating these messages are doing so in the best way that they can.
Thank you, Manny. Does anybody in the room have any questions for Manny? Mike McCarthy in the back.
Just one comment to Manny. Tell him thank you for creating the spreadsheet, the monthly report spreadsheet.
Oh yes, definitely. Mike McCarthy just wanted to thank you for creating the monthly report protocol that you've done. We all find that very useful, and a real acknowledgement that FEMA is trying to work with us at the relay end of things to try to make sure that we know what you did and we can keep our EAS logs in compliance. So thank you from all of us for that.
Thank you everyone for all the input and all the wonderful information and feedback that we get.
Okay. Any other questions for Manny before we move on to other issues? We have some vendors in the room, so I'm sure we may get some comments from vendors.
Well, I will say one of the things I learned recently, when we were out in DC for that EAS forum, I had the opportunity to go out to JITIC, the IPAWS test lab, and they invite anybody to come out there. They test software, they test alert origination software out there. But a couple of the things that Manning highlighted is that FEMA is more than happy to go out and travel to, maybe not right now during the budget, but once things settle out again, FEMA and Manny personally is more than willing to go out to states, help you figure out what you need for CAP and help with guidance. Manny has a real good PowerPoint presentation on the 7 things that you need to figure out in order to have good governance over CAP, who's issuing it, what it takes to issue a CAP alert, and he can get into that more, and I'm sure he'd be happy to send out the PowerPoint to anybody that would like to see it, and that was part of a webinar that they did recently that IPAWS did. But the other part of what I saw at the JITIC lab out in the DC area, FEMA is more than happy to work with states, and in particular emergency management agencies, that are trying to pick an alert origination program. And they will actually take your set of requirements, take the alert origination program you're considering buying, and will evaluate it for you based on your requirements. It's not a certification program to tell you whether that system is certified to work with IPAWS or whatever. What they're doing is on your behalf setting up a whole test regime to test against the requirements that you have set up that you want this alert origination program to accomplish. They're doing that right now at the state of Nebraska. They came up with a list of, and Manny can tell you, I think it was about 50 different requirements. So that the state comes up with a list of requirements, asks FEMA to take a look at this system. FEMA then asks JITIC to take a look at it. They run all these tests. The people from the state can be there during the tests. They can actually execute some of these test scripts and be a part of vetting whether that system will meet their needs. So I'm sure Manny would be more than willing to talk to anybody that would want to avail themselves of that.
Manny, I have a question for you. This is Richard. At the meeting in Washington, we heard a lot about the basic requirements of EAS that go beyond IPAWS Open. Has anybody from the Commission talked to you about doing testing for, since you have all the equipment available to you to do it, to do any testing for other issues beyond IPAWS Open?
There have been some conversations in the past, Richard, and we developed the lab, and I want to thank, before I continue answering that, Gary Tim and Jim Skinner as well, who came down and visited the lab with our crew down there several weeks ago. And, they took the time to do that. We do enjoy and welcome anyone that wants to work with us through that lab. So going back to that question, yes, we discussed it. We are open and are always willing to collaborate with our partners at the FCC. But I can't say that there is a specific plan to do so. But we would look forward to assisting.
Is there anything that we can do in the user community to make it, to propel that forward?
Yeah, I think, keep bringing it up, make a few phone calls. The thing about these systems and procedures and policies, Gary has heard me preach about this, and they certainly heard me, they visited us down there. It's not just the technical and engineering space that we operate in. It's the whole thing. You have to look at it from A to Z, all the procedures, all the governance, all the policies, all the best practices that then provide us with better intelligence, so to speak, to operate that technology and to improve it. The lab interoperability and usability, which is where the rubber meets the road. When we were planning all this for CAP and iPaws, I think it was planned well. I think we are executing it well, in both private and public sectors. We're learning as we go, but now we need to really get this stuff to interoperate, to work with each other, and all these systems have to work together. Now's the time to start doing that. Create the baselines and begin that incremental improvement so that we can sustain public warning effectively for years to come. We certainly don't want anything to stagnate, and that's why the lab is there.
Well said, Manny. So we'll try to see if we can support you. Anybody else have comments on iPaws Open or anything that has to do with CAP at this point? We're going to call on the vendors maybe to make some other comments later, but basically in the relay user community, anybody else have comments about that or questions?
Or just one comment that I had, Richard, is, a while back when we started the Amber Alert, Clay came up with a term called zinc and oil. That the Amber Alert system kind of lubricated the system and galvanized everybody's opinion about it. And it went forward, EAS made monumental explore because of it. Because of the ability of PAWS to be able to reach CMAS, and people are giving up their landlines for cell phones. There is a movement amongst the emergency managers in my state. They are ready to hop at zinc and oil. Now they want, where in the past they were ambivalent to EAS. Now they want it because they're looking at it as a replacement for SIMS. And eventually the reverse 911, which is an opt-in program, is just not going to be as effective as the CMAS program, which is an opt-out program. So all of a sudden now we're getting requests from just about every emergency manager in the state to join up and be able to have a way to activate EAS and get to those cell phones.
Okay. All right. I want to move on to compliance issues, and I'm wondering if, just a show of hands, how many people have compliance questions or have comments on compliance, or whether we can move on to another part of the agenda. Everybody's complying, I guess. Anybody on the phone want to comply?
I mean, I will say the one thing at the EAS forum that the FCC was asked is if stations should be logging the iPaws RWTs, and Greg Cook says yes, they are checking for those, they should be logging them.
Yes, because how else are you going to prove you're connected? Just an Ethernet cable plugged in probably would not suffice. So, anyway. Robert, you're scowling. How's things happening in Arizona?
I'm in a frustrated position because in Arizona, the state purchased a piece of software several years ago, WebEOC.
Oh, yes.
You're familiar with, which they finally released an EAS module of it last fall.
Except for?
Well, I don't have the except for yet, except it's not working yet.
Well, the latest story on that is their plug-in for WebEOC, according to information I've received from some people in the EM community that have WebEOC, is that it's basically a cog-to-cog communications device, and it's not really designed to do the public warning piece that we need. So the emergency management community is that a large part of who in that community have WebEOC is their engine that manages their operations. They don't have a plug-in within WebEOC to do that really does what we want for EAS yet. So, and
that's our frustrating problem, because we have this Arizona plan rewritten basically to comply with that, but we're waiting for that hole to be filled with whatever we're going to fill it with.
Has anybody seen the iPhone app that supposedly will work in this? Or Manny, have you heard anything about other apps for EM community?
Well, there are several out there. I don't remember each and every one of them now, but we certainly share that with you.
Okay, I know you can't recommend anything, and you have the website where you list everything, but the EM community, I think, really needs to know about that.
Yeah, that is true. You know, one of the things that we always encourage vendors to do as well is when they have a product that's ready to ship, ready to be sold, to let us know, you know, maybe let us try it out. That's why we have a lab. And then so when we go out as well to these demonstrations that we do, and we used to do at FB, then we can bring those out, folks can see them, folks can try them out as well.
Well, if anybody knows anybody with one of the OC people, we need to pound on them.
The interesting thing is what
Yes. This is Alan. There are some applications out for folks with Android phones that do not have built-in CMAS, capability. You can find them fairly easily by going to the application store. They're free. I've got one on my phone that's labeled Union Wireless, but it seems to work fine. However, it's a data channel application, so if things get congested, it's not going to work as well as native CMAS but there are things out there that will make Android phones at least respond to them. And I know this because it picks up the monthly test that is sent to the phone system, and most phones are set to ignore because the cell phone providers, service providers, didn't want to annoy their people with test messages. So there is a once-a-month test that's set out to all the providers, and in this particular application, you can dig into it. I think it's actually written by Boleros, which is one of the provider for alternative methods of getting messages out. But like I said, it runs through data channels, so it's not quite as difficult as the native we ever see that.
Thank you, Al. I'm sorry, you want to come up to the mic?
Oh, sure, I can go up before I can just yell, whichever's better for you.
Okay.
George Molnar, I'm one of those EM guys, and I'm curious and very intrigued by what you're saying about WebEOC. Phil Donahue here, no dress. Now I know how old you guys are. Okay. In Arizona, for example, why would the WebEOC product be something that broadcasters or alert and warning folks would want access to?
Well,
want access.
Let me say how this started.
I'm a little confused, so yeah.
The emergency management community went to our EAS summit several years ago, and the guy says, well, we got to do something with that. So we looked at My State USA, we looked at yours, we looked at the various packages out there. And then behind our back, the state of Arizona says, oh, well, WebEOC is the way to go. And they signed a statewide contract for WebEOC and says, this will do. So after 3 years, it doesn't do it yet. And they keep telling us. And when you talk about beating on WebEOC, I've gotten to the point where they say, you're not the purchaser. We only talk to the state of Arizona. Don't bother us. And so I've kind of been shot down on that one, but we're trying to get that going because we really want to get a way to be able to allow the counties and the cities and the agencies that have WebEOC that are part of our LACC group in each county to be able to activate EAS, and we can't do it at this point.
This goes to the point that broadcasters are relaying. Our function is to relay to the public. We are not originators, nor should we ever be. But we want the EM community to be able to integrate origination with their overall EOC management. And if you have a tool like WebEOC that supposedly is a software package to manage your EOC, it would make sense to me to have a way within that to be able to integrate alert and warning for EAS and CMAS right in that package.
And when
we don't want to do it.
And when the state bought the package, they were handed a bill of goods that says, oh yes, we don't have that plug-in yet, but we will, and it will work great. And
it almost sounds like you have a set of screwdrivers, but you really need a Torx wrench.
It's vaporware, okay?
I mean, this WebEOC really isn't the product I don't think that you're looking for in this application.
But
and
we've
I know
already,
the community uses it to communicate.
They've already spent the money, and they're not going to turn around and spend My State USA or anybody else's because they're not going to throw more money at the project. They're going to make what they bought work.
Interesting, okay, I don't want to take up the
Okay,
time, I'm
well,
just
yeah,
very curious, we should talk afterwards, I like
after the
that.
meeting, we'll beat up on the WebEOC people.
While we've got you up here, since you're from the EM community, I'll talk a little bit, let you think a little bit, but I mean, Richard's first statement was, how do we get EM on board with EAS? And obviously you're here, you're interested in it, and you're involved with the system, so, I mean, you know, I obviously can't speak for the entire emergency management community, but, you know, what, we've all had our meetings with emergency management and, you know, how do we get them involved, and some emergency managers have just refused to use EAS at all. So, I mean, I don't know what your ideas might be, you know, whether it's personalities or how to sell it, but, you know,
This is another reason why you should never volunteer. That's a great question. It really is, because I think you're right. There's a disconnect between the EM community and the broadcast community. I'm very, very fortunate in so many ways to have a great deal of experience in the broadcast community before moving over to the dark side of emergency management. And some of my great friends are here from the broadcast community who are also very, very well versed and invested in alert and warning. Here in Nevada, we have an alert and warning working group, which includes broadcast support and EM support. EAS, as such, has kind of a bad rap, and I think we all know that. I mean, we look at the national test, we can slyly say, yeah, when they get around to that report, because we know that it's going to be a little uncomfortable. We know that EAS has had its ups and downs, and it's limited. And I think your average EM practitioner, be it at a local level or even a state or national level, doesn't have a full grasp of how to originate messages. What is the capability that the broadcast community has to get across? Well, you hear people talk about mobile EAS. Okay, well, you can have rich text and graphics and video and sound and all that. Okay, do they have to do that? Or is it 90 characters? Or is it 140 characters? Or is it an EAS canned message? They're overwhelmed, I think, by and large, by the flood of ways to get the word out. And EAS is, I think, lost a little bit in that mix, and it's also perceived as it's the old way. That's what Harry Truman set up. It isn't, but I think that's the perception.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
It does, but I'd like to take that to another level. This is Richard again. I'll talk about this a little bit on Wednesday when I deliver the paper, but